A very good afternoon to all the students. Today I welcome you to this session of information security. In this session, we will learn about the Blobfish algorithm, which is similar to, it's alternative to the DES, but some rounds are similar to DES that we have done in the previous lectures. Then we will do the placement of encryption function and we will do the link encryption and end-to-end encryption. So first of all, let's do the Blowfish algorithm. Blowfish algorithm was proposed by Bruce Shiner in 1993. It was proposed by Bruce Shiner in 1993. It is it follows the same crystal structure that we followed in DES. It is also symmetric key algorithm, that means same key is used for encryption and decryption, and it is also block cipher based algorithms which actually converts the plain text into ciphertext, but in blocks of 64 bits. But in blocks of 64 bits, it is alternate to DES, and here it is more secure as the key size is variable. There the key was fixed as 48 bits. Now the key size is variable. It varies from 32-bit to 448 bits. It varies from 32-bit to 448 bits. So there are two types of keys which would be generated. This would be the input key and this would be randomly generated key. Number of subkeys which are in array from P0 to P17, they are 18 in number and they are randomly generated keys. They are randomly generated keys. This key will be the input which would be given by the user, and here we have number of subkeys, that is 18, and it will be stored in P array which will be numbered from P0 to P17. Again it will follow 16 fiscal rounds. Again it will follow 16 fiscal rounds. Then it has four substitution boxes. It has four substitution boxes. In every substitution box, we have 256 entries. Suppose this is your S box, and in this you have 16 into 16 array. 16 6 are 16 16s are 256. So in this way they will be numbered. So 15 rows and 15 0 to 15 16 rows and 16 columns would be there, and each column is, or each entry will be of 32-bit. I repeat again, there will be four S box. One S box will comprise of 256 entries. That means 16 rows and 16 column would be there in single S box, and each single column, that is one entry. Each single column is referred as one entry, and it will comprise of 32 bits. And it will comprise of 32 bits. I repeat, it was proposed by Bruce Shiner in 1993, follows the fiscal structure as we followed in DES. It is also symmetric key algo. That is, same key is used for encryption and decryption as well. Block cipher. So it is used to convert the plain text of 64-bit into the ciphertext of 64-bit. Then you have, it is alternative to DES. It is alternative to DES, and key size is variable. That is it varies from 32-bit to 448-bit. There will be 18 subkeys numbered from P0 to P17. They will be randomly generated keys, and number of rounds would be 16 fiscal rounds, and number of substitution boxes will be 4, and each box will have 256 entry, and each entry in the block comprises of 32 bits. Each entry in the block will comprise of 32 bits. Now, what are the various properties of this Blowfish? First property, it is relatively fast as compared to DES. It is fast. It is secure because it is compact as it takes less memory in the computer to get executed or to get stored. Then it is simple. It simply uses add and XOR operations. Then you have secure because the key size is variable, so it will be definitely more secure because the hacker will not know that how much bit of this key you have used. That means he will have to try now. Suppose you have used a 256-bit key, then he has to try to raise to power 256-bit combinations because the key space would be too large for him to try. So relatively it is secure than DES. I repeat again, it is fast, it is compact, it is secure, and it is simple to execute. Fine. Why it is secure? Because the key size is variable. The key varies from 32-bit to 448 bits. Right? So 32-bit to 448-bit, the key size is varying. Therefore, this is more secure because the hacker will have to try the larger key space. Because if we have deployed 256 keys in order to encrypt this data, so he will have to try 2 raised to power 256 combination in order to analyze or in order to get the cryptography text or ciphertext. Then he will be only able to convert it into the plain text. So that's why the Glowfish is more secure. Now, first step. First of all, we will generate the first step, generation of subkeys. Total subkeys are 18. Total subkeys are 18 and they are numbered from P0 to P17. They are numbered from P0 to P17, right? And it is equal to some any hexadecimal number which you can write. It is randomly generated hexadecimal number. For example, I'm writing 243F 6A 68. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See, in hexadecimal number, your numbers are from 0 to 15. 0 to 9, they are binary numbers. And there onwards, A to F, they are hexadecimal numbers. And 0 to 15 numbers are represented in 4 bits each. In 4 bits each. That means if I do the representation of supposing I'm just giving you an example 246A. For example, this 4-digit number is given to me. So A is 10. So I'll write 1010 and this will be 0, then 0100, then this is 0110. So this is the equivalent binary of this hexadecimal number to 460. If I take 4 bits to represent a single digit, then to represent 8 bits, 8-digit number, that is hexadecimal number, you will take 8 into 4, that is equal to 32 bits. That is equal to 32 bits. Fine. 224 F6A68. Now I want to convert it into binary. Then I will calculate the number of bits. So when I'll convert it into binary, it will become the 32-bit number. Similarly, P0, you have P1. You will take any hexadecimal F, A, B, D, 1, 2, 3, 5. Right? So this can be your any hexadecimal number. Similarly, you can write A, B, C, D, E, F. Then you can write 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? So this is how the keys are generated. They are randomly generated hexadecimal key and each key takes 32 bits to represent. Each key takes how many bits to represent? 32 bits to represent because a single digit takes 4-bit binary. Okay. So this is how subkey is generated and this is since these are 18 numbers, so 18 into 32-bit size will be fixed in the memory. See, P0, P1, P2 up to P7 and each entry is of 32 bits. So this is the way the array is stored. This is the way the array will be stored inside the memory of the computer, that is subkey generation, right? So the numbers will be numbered from P0 to P17 and each subkey is going to take 32 bits. So the memory is reserved in the form of array with 18 entries and each entry of 32 bits. Fine. So this is how the subkeys are generated. Next, next is the how these keys will be changed with respect to the input keys. Second step, to change the subkeys with respect to input key. Now we have to, because I told you that input key is variable and it varies from 32-bit to 448-bit. So let's suppose the key bit is 448-bit. If I divide it by 32-bit, we will get 14 keys. 448 is the total key which I am using, and this is of input key is of 32 bits. So this key will be divided into 14 equal portions. So this key input key will be divided into 14 equal portion. I write here, if input key is 448-bit, but required key is of 32-bit, then we will divide 448 by 32-bit, which will give me 14 keys or 14 equal portion of keys. Portion of key, right? 14 equal portion of key. Now, what we have to do is we have to take the first P0 location from the array, that is sub key 0 from the array, and XOR it with the first portion. That is, if I name these keys 14 equal portion, then it will be represented from K0 to K13. It will be done from K0 to K13. Or for more clarity, I am taking the sub keys as P1 to P18, and this will be as key 1 to key 14. For more clarity, I am taking these keys as sub keys as P1 to P18 and other keys as K1 to K14, which we have derived from here. Now you have to perform for P1, perform the XOR of P1 and K1, which will be equal to my first key for the first crystal round. Okay, you will get the first key, that is K1 of 32 bits, to be used as input for first crystal round. K1 is XORed with P1 in order to get the first key of 32-bit to be given as input for the first crystal round. Then P2 will be equal to P2 XOR K2. So this will give me K2, which will be again of 32 bits, and it will be used as input for second crystal round. Now, how this has become 32-bit? Since my sub key is of 32-bit, because I told you that there will be an array which will be numbered from P0 to P18, P17, and it will be having 32-bit. So that is there. And for that, and here we have divided 448 bits divided by 32 bits. We have taken the single portion of 32-bit each. So that's why 32-bit will be XORed by another 32 bits. That is, P1 32 bits will be XORed by the 32 bits of the key K1. And this is how it will give you an output of 32-bit. Now, similarly, you can do for P3, P4, P5, P6, P7 up till P14. You will do P14 XOR K14, and you will get the K14 as input for the 14th crystal round. Again, it will be of 32 bits. Again, it will be of 32 bits. Now, when it comes P15, now we are finished up with the, or we have exhausted with the keys. Now we have exhausted with the keys because there is no key which can go with P15. So you will XOR P15 with the K1 again. XOR P15 with the K1 again. So this will be my K15. Then P16 with the K2. Okay. You will get K16. Then P17 with the K3. You will get K17. And P18 with the K4. You will get K18. This is how you will derive the keys for, sorry, we have to do it for the 16 rounds. So you will do it like this. You will have the array which will be from P1 to P18 and it is XORed for this thing. Fine. Now this is how you will get the this table. Now if I write the summarize the table for this, what would be it? I'll write it here only. P0 will be equal to P1 will be equal to P1 XOR K1. Then P2 will be equal to P. Up till P14, you will perform the XORing of P14 and K14. Then for P15, you will XOR with K1, then K2, then K3 and K4. This is how you will get an array, which will be from K1 to K18. Which will be from K1 to K18, or you will transfer this back into the array of P0 to P17. Or you will transfer this back into the array of P0 to P17. Next step is to write it back, write this back into the P array, which is ranging from P0 to P17. Now these keys will be changed by doing the XOR of K input key, and final key would be P0 to P17. So you will locate the keys which has to be given as an input to the Feastel in the Feastel structure that will be varying from P0 to P17. Fine. So next step, initialize the substitution boxes. Initialize the step number 3. Initialize the substitution boxes. Just to initialize, we'll later on see what we have to do in this. Initialize the substitution boxes S1 to S4 because 4 substitution boxes will be there and each substitution box will contain 256 entries and one entry is of 32 bits. So this will be used for encryption and decryption. This will be used for encryption and decryption. Fine. So now let's draw the diagram for the Feastel rounds in encryption part of Blowfish. So input is 64-bit plain text. Then you will divide this text into 32 bits each into left half and right half. So I'm writing L for left half and R for right half. This will be again of 32 bits. Next, perform the XOR with the first key, that is P1, because we have copied the key back to P1 array. So take the first key as P1 and XOR with this left half and give this input to the function block, and output of the function block will be again XORed by the right part. Again XORed by the right part. Right. So this will be input for the next round. This will become the next left bit, 32 bit, and this will become the next right 32 bit. So this completes your first Feastel round. Again, perform the XOR with the left part by giving the P2 as key. Then apply it to the function block. The output of the function block is again XORed with the right part, and this will go again for the next input to the left and right respectively. So this will become left 32 bit, and this will become right 32 bit. Fine. So this is my first Feastel round. This is my second Feastel round. Feastel round 2, and Feastel round 1. Say, I again repeat, your 64-bit plain text is divided into two equal halves, 32 bits each. Left part will be of 32 bit and right part will also be of 32 bit. Fine. And input key P1 is applied to the XOR, and both of them are XORed, and finally the output of this block will go to the function block. Function block's output will be again XORed with the right part. And then the swapping will be done. Right will become the new left and left will become the new right. Then again, you will apply the key P2, perform the XOR of left part and the P2 key, and apply it to the function block. And the output of function block is again XORed with the right part as 32 bits, and it is again becoming the new left part and right part. So this is your second Feastel round, and this is your first Feastel round. This is how it will continue. Fine. So it will continue till 16. It will continue till 16. I'll show you when P16 will be applied. After that, the diagram I'm making. This will continue. So this will continue till 16th round. Suppose the R16, this is 16 keys or have been implemented. Now after 16 Feastel rounds, what happens? What you have to do is, suppose this is left 16, this is right 16. Now 16 rounds have been completed. Now apply the XOR here directly. Here no swapping of left and right text will be done. So left part will be XORed with the P18, and here it will be XORed with P17. The result which is coming from right part is XORed with P17. Here the result which is coming from left part is XORed with P18. And finally, they will give you the ciphertext. Finally, they will give you, when you join them together, because this output will be of 32 bits, this output will also be of 32 bits. So when you concatenate both, you will get the ciphertext of 64 bit. Then you will get the ciphertext of 64 bit. So this process is called no swapping. This process is called no swapping because we have not swapped left part with the right part. I tell you again, the process which I have told you in the previous figure will continue till 16 rounds for P is equal to 16. For P is equal to 16. Now, the output of left 16 and P16 without applying to the function block will come here and it will be XORed with the P18. Fine. And after this, the output of function block and R7 will come here and it is XORed with the P17. It will XORed with the P17. And finally, when you club both of this, it will give you ciphertext of 64 bit. It will give you the ciphertext of 64 bit. Continue till 16th round. Then the output of function block and R17 is XORed with P17 and give you the 32 bits. Here, the output of both of these will be XORed with P18 and it will give you left 16 bits. So combine left and right 16 bit, you will get the ciphertext of 64 bits. You will get the ciphertext of 64 bits. Next is algo. First, divide the 64-bit plain text into two equal halves of 32 bits each. Name them as L and R, left and right respectively. So left will be of 32 bits and R right part will also be of 32 bits. Now, what we have to do is, Loop will start for I is equal to 1 to 16 because 16 times we have applied the key. So Li will be equal to Li plus XOR Pi. Fine. Then what about right part? Now function is applied to the output of left input. So again perform the XOR with the right part. Form the XOR with the right part. Then swap Li and Ri. I repeat, for I is equal to 1 to 16, perform the XOR of the key with the left part, then apply it to the function block. So output of function block will be f of L of I and it is XOR with the right part and swap Li and Ri. Swap left part and right part, right? So next step, undo the last swap. Where I have written no swapping is done. So you will write undo the last swap. And last step is R is equal to R16, whatever the output of R is, and do it XOR with P17. Then left is equal to whatever the output of left part would be and XOR it with P18. So combine L and R to get 64-bit of ciphertext. To get 64-bit of cipher text. So combine L and R to get 16-bit, 64-bit of ciphertext. I again repeat, divide the 64-bit plain text into the two equal halves of 32 bits each. Name them L and R. For I is equal to 1 to 16, perform the XOR of Li and key. Then whatever the output of the function block, that is f of L of I, and it is XORed with the right part. Then you have to swap left part and right part. Then in the last step, you are going to undo the swap and R is equal to R XOR P17 and left is equal to left XOR P18. Then combine L and R output to get the 64-bit cipher text. This is how this algorithm works. Now let us see next what is inside the function. S boxes function. There were 4 S boxes, S box 3, S box 4. There were 4 S boxes, write on X box 3, X box 4. Single entry in the S box was of 32-bit. We'll write 32-bit. It will take 32-bit as input and divide it into 8-bit each and give the input to the each S box individually. Where S box will be converting them to 32 bits. Fine. First of all, the addition of this S box is performed. Then we will perform the XOR of S box and S box 2 and X box 3. And finally, we will perform the addition of S box 3 and S box 4. And you will get the final output as 32-bit. See, I repeat, 32-bit is given as input. It is divided into 8 bits and given as input to each S box individually. S box will convert it into 32 bits. Then the output of S1 box 1 and S box 2 is added. Then XOR is performed on S box 2 and X box 3. And finally, the addition is performed on the output of S box and S box 3 and S box 4. And finally, you will get the output as 32-bit. And this will be XORed with the right part in order to get the right part. Fine. So this is what is inside the function block. Now, what is the crux of this? First, function f splits the 32-bit input to the 8-bit quarter. 8-bit into 4 8-bit quarters. And gives it as input to each of S box. Each of the S boxes. S boxes are responsible are responsible for converting 8-bit to 32 bits as output. Fine. So this is what is being done in the function block. So this completes your Blowfish algorithm. I repeat, the crux of this is the function block will split the given input of 32 bits into 4 8-bits quarter, and they will be applied to each of the S blocks individually. And finally, you will perform the simple AND and XOR operation to get the 32-bit output. That means X box is responsible for producing the 32-bit output individually, and then we will club the result. And then output of the function block is also the 32-bit. This is how the ciphertext is produced inside the Blowfish algorithm or using the Blowfish algorithm. See, decryption part will also undergo the same feature rounds, but the keys applied will be reversed. But the keys applied will be reversed. That is, you will apply the key from P18 to P1. You have to apply the keys in reverse order, and same thing will the process will go under your ciphertext will undergo the same process of the feasible round. Your ciphertext will be 64-bit broken down into 32-bit each. Then again XOR will be applied, but here the keys will start from P18 and it will go till P1. This is how the decryption will be followed in the Blowfish algorithm. So what is the advantages and disadvantages of Blowfish algorithm? First advantage is it is a block cipher algorithm. Second, it is compact, takes less memory. Then it is secure. Then it is simple. It is fast. So these are the advantages. Now, what are the disadvantages? For calculating the key space, for calculating the keys which were XORed with keys, your sub keys were XORed with keys, fine. Other set of keys. This will require more computation time, require more computation. So this will be little complex to calculate, little complex to calculate because it takes much more time. Second, so Blowfish require a pre-processing of 4 kbs in before starting with the process. After converting to ciphertext, each process will take 2 XOR operation. For that, it requires 4 kb of text. It needs to pre-process 4 kb of text in each round. In each round. So these are the disadvantages. Advantages: it is block cipher, compact, secure, simple, and fast. Then more complications, more computation time will be required in order to calculate the XOR of subkeys and the key pairs. Then it requires a pre-processing time of 4 kb of text in each round. Before performing the XOR, we need the pre-processing of 4 kbs because it is applied to the function block. Then we will apply the output of the function block is applied to the write block. So that's why it takes 4 kbs of text, right? So next topic is placement of encryption function. See, whenever you are going for the symmetric encryption, that means both the ends are using the same key for encryption as well as decryption. Now, when you are sharing the keys, may that be hacked by the opponent or the hacker in order to actually guess what is the plain text which was being sent using that particular key. He will try to decode the plain text from the given ciphertext using the key. So for that, because the confidentiality means the receiver has received the information, only the intended receiver has received the information. So therefore, we have to place some encryption function in order to ensure the secure transmission of the data from one end to the another. For that, we have two types of security. One is linked encryption, another is end-to-end encryption. So first of all, we have to identify, before proceeding to this topic, we have to identify where the regions where are susceptible to attack. For example, this is your organization and it is having one LAN. So these are the computers which are connected. Fine. So first vulnerability where the attack can happen is your LAN. Because your LAN person can give the data to any other person without, he can physically hand over the data to any other unknown, unauthorized person. So first vulnerability is in the LAN itself. Right? Second, he is connected to some communication device. He is connected to some communication device so that he can transfer the data from his LAN to other networks. So communication device where my entire data is routed and then it is routed to the outside world. So second vulnerability will lie here. First vulnerability is in the LAN itself. Second vulnerability will be in the communication device itself. Then third vulnerability is in the wiring closet. Because your LAN is entirely wired, your communication device is connected and it is done through the wiring closet where wireless links and wired links are there. Fine. So third vulnerability will lie here. By changing the connection, the hacker can tamper with the data. So this is third vulnerability zone. Fine. And after that, your data is transmitted to the router. That is for the uh, using the internet, the data will be passed on to the router and you will be communicated to the wide area network. So here your fourth vulnerability will be there, where the hackers can attack your data. Where the hackers can attack your data. First vulnerability is in the LAN. The attacker can attack your LAN and get the data, or he can have access to some IPs and access the username and password and can access the data which is inside the LAN. Now he's again linked to the communication device, where communication device is susceptible to attack. That is wherever the communication is taking place. So second vulnerability is there, right? And here the wiring closet is there. He can physically change the connection in order to get the access of data. Then when the data is connected, your LAN data is passed on to the router for the outside communication. Then the fourth vulnerability will be there when the router is supposed to be hacked, or router is sending the packets and that packets will be captured by the hacker and later on decoded uh, to convert it into the plain text. The ciphertext will be converted to the plain text. So to ensure the secure communication, we have two forms of encryption. One is link encryption and second is end-to-end encryption. Now, how that is done? Okay. So how this works? Supposingly this is the system which is attached to the router, and it is transmitting the packet. So this is your packet switching system where the packets are being transformed. The packets are being sent from system A to system B or system C. Right? So these are your routers which are transferring the data R1, R2, R3, R4. This is your system which is connected to the routers, right? And this is the receiving systems which are connected to this network, and this is on the internet. Now, first is link encryption. The two nodes which are sending data in among themselves are encrypted. Means if this node is sending data to this router R1, then this entire link is encrypted. The link between the sender and the receiver is encrypted. That is called link encryption. Then this router 1 is going to forward the data to router 2. So this link is entirely encrypted. Now R2 will be sending the data to system B. So this link will be encrypted. This is called link encryption. When the connection between the two consecutive systems who are communicating with each other, the link is encrypted, right? So that is called link encryption. What happens in link encryption? There are two things which are in the packet because data is transmitted in the form of packets, and these packets are encrypted from one link to the another link. Fine. So there are two things. One is header, another is payload. There are two parts of every packet which is sent over the internet. It comprises of one header, another is payload. Payload is the actual data which is to be sent. Payload is the actual data which is to be sent to the other user. And header will contain the destination information, router ID, from which router it has been there. So this entire packet is there, fine. In link encryption, this entire packet, including the sender's information and receiver's information, will also be encrypted. Will also be encrypted. What does that mean? Your entire packet, including the information of head, sender and receiver, will be encrypted. This packet is being sent, the link is encrypted, so entire packet is encrypted. The entire packet is converted to the ciphertext. So this is there, this is there. Now how router 1 will know the destination part? So this packet is decrypted at every intermediate node. To get the receiver's address, this packet will be decrypted at the every intermediate node. This packet will be decrypted at the every intermediate node so that it can reach the receiver address and will forward the packet to the corresponding router. For example, R1 wants to send the data to R2. The packet will be received by R1 from system A. Now R1 will decrypt this packet and read the contents of the receiver address, and then we'll see which router will lead to the destination. Accordingly, it will forward the packet to R2, and R2 will finally again decrypt the packet to read the receiver's address, and then will forward to the system B. So this is called link encryption. When the link between the two parties who are communicating, either they are intermediate or direct, that is called decrypt in link encryption. And here the entire packet, including the payload and the header, actually what we are supposed to do, we are supposed to hide the payload. The actual information which is to be sent is encrypted from plain text to the ciphertext. That's all we want to do. But for more security, it will encrypt the header and payload both. And what is the disadvantage? The router has to uh, routers has extra time overhead because it has to decrypt the entire packet in order to read the header. At every node, the packet is decrypted. For example, if the hacker has the access to this router 1 and if the packet is decrypted, he is going to read that. So this is link encryption, and it is not as secure as end encryption, right? So that this is how the data is being sent from the one link to the another. The router 1 will decrypt the packet, read the receiver's address, go to the R2 and will pass the packet to the R2, as R2 is the nearest neighbor which is going to send the packets to system B. At R2, the packets are again decrypted for the receiver's address and it will forward it to the system B. This is how the link encryption goes. Now, what is end-to-end encryption? The entire links, every link on this network will be encrypted, but the packet payload is encrypted, header is not encrypted. Header is not encrypted. Header is not encrypted. Payload is encrypted. Fine. Only payload is encrypted, but headers are not encrypted. So what is the benefit? The router will read the data. Router will read the receiver address from the header part and pass the encrypted packet. That means no copy of the data will be stored on the intermediate nodes. No copy of the data is stored on the intermediate nodes. It will read only the contents of the header to get the receiver address and pass it on to the receiver. This is how end-to-end encryption goes. This link is encrypted, this link is encrypted, this link is encrypted. Even this link is encrypted, this link is encrypted. Any link you follow on the network will be encrypted. So this is called end-to-end encryption. This is how it works. For more clarity, I'll share one PPT with you. So what is difference between link encryption versus end-to-end encryption? First, the difference is encrypt the data over the individual links in the network. Each link endpoint shares a secret key, decrypts and encrypts at each path, and requires all links and devices to support same type of encryption. That means it requires number of keys for the encryption and decryption. Because when two computers decide to share the data, they will share one key with them. So if there are thousands of computers on the network, so thousands of key will be generated. End-to-end encryption involves the two key. That is because the data is encrypted from the sender and the receiver itself. Both of them agree on the protocol that we will encrypt the data and share the key which will encrypt or decrypt the data. So they do not rely on any intermediate network devices. So this is a diagram which I have explained. Now, end-to-end encryption, if you see, so there is one black dot which you can see from the sender to the receiver side. And another is packet switching network, which is transmitting the packets. So with the gray color, you have link encryption devices where two routers are exchanging the common key in order to encrypt or decrypt the data. So what is exact difference between link encryption and end-to-end encryption? And the host of every link should share a key and should be able to do the encryption and decryption. The intermediate host of the transmission path do not need to have the cryptographic facility. That means they do not need to have the encryption and decryption key. For example, if there are n users in the network, the number of keys which will be required is n into n minus 1 by 2 respectively. Whereas the number of keys that will be required for symmetric key would be 2n respectively, because both the users will require the key, otherwise no users will require the no intermediate users will require the key. Then all the messages which have to be encrypted, which are to be sent, have to be decrypted and encrypted at every link so as to read the receiver's or sender's address. Then end-to-end encryption will be encryption is application and message specific and need not to be done for all the messages. Only the header part is read for the reception and the receiver address is once read and it is passed to that particular receiver. Then one encryption algorithm is used for all the users, but in end-to-end encryption, the user has the permission for the encryption algorithm of his choice. He can deploy the algorithm of his choice in order to perform the end-to-end encryption. The data is exposed at the end host and the intermediate host. The data is exposed at the end host and wherever you are decrypting the data, that data is likely to be exposed. Whereas in end-to-end encryption, data is not likely to be exposed because the actual receiver will receive the data and he will only decrypt the data. Otherwise, other intermediate routers are not supposed to decrypt the data. Next, link encryption occurs at layer 1 or 2, where end-to-end encryption occurs at 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 layers. So this is how the encryption is done. See, suppose there is a data has to be sent from A to B. And there are two links, intermediary links I1 and I2. Right? Now A and B decided to perform the secure transmission of data. They have decided to perform the secure transmission of data. Now, first of all, the link between A and I1 will be encrypted. So they will share one key called K1. Right? The link between A and I1 will be secured or encrypted using the key K1. Then I1 and I2 will be encrypted using the key K2. Then I2 will be encrypted using the I2 and B will be encrypted using the K3. That means the link between A and I1 will be encrypted using the key K1. Link between the I1 and I2 is encrypted using the key K2. And the link between I2 and B is encrypted using the key K3. How many keys will be exchanged? 3 keys. Now packet will transmit from A to I1 using the key K1. Fine. Then it will be decrypted in order to read the receiver's address. Now it will have one copy of data. So data is exposed here. Now I1 and I2 are going to secure the transmission using the key K2. So K2 will be applied on this data and data will be transferred to I2. Then I2 is going to decrypt this node. I2 is going to decrypt this packet in order to fetch the receiver address. Fine. So I2 will have the another copy. I2 will have the another copy of data. That means 2 copies would be there with I1 and I2. Then hacker can have the access to I1 and I2 and it can retrieve the data. And finally, this link will be encrypted using the K3 and then K3 will decrypt the data which is with I2 when it will receive it. Fine. So that means 2 intermediate copies will be there on the link-to-link encryption. While when end-to-end encryption is performed, I1, I2, and B. Now A and B shared the key. This is a key which is shared between A and B. Let it be K1. They know the key K1 has been shared between the sender and the receiver, that is A and B. So they are going to encrypt the data or decrypt the data using the key K1. Now the data which is to be sent, its header is not encrypted. Header is not encrypted. Only the payload, only the data, actual data, only the actual data or payload is encrypted. Or payload is encrypted. Then from the header, the receiver address will be visible. So A1 will pass the data to I1. I1 reads the receiver address. Okay, it has to go to B. So the next router is I2. It will pass the data to I2. I2 will not decrypt the data because it does not require to. So it will read the header and reads the receiver's address, pass it on to the B. Now B has received the data. It has got the encrypted payload. The actual data which was encrypted was being received by B. Now B will apply the shared key in order to decrypt this packet. Now in link encryption, the shared keys are there. The links will have to follow the same algorithm for the encryption and decryption. All the links will have to follow the same algorithm for encryption as well as decryption. For encryption as well as decryption. Wherever here A and B are sending data, they are deciding that they will be sending the data in encrypted form. So they can have the algorithm of their own choice. So they can have the algorithm of their own choice. So that can be more secure. that can be more scared. This is how the confidentiality is maintained between A and B. So, dear students, thank you so much. So we can, I can take your queries. If you have any problems, you can send me either through the WhatsApp or you can call me anytime. Thank you so much.